Welcome back, friends, to the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, David Flores, CEO of Psychedelic Spotlight, coming to you from our studios here in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. And today I have the very distinct pleasure of being joined by two great gentlemen here. We've got Joseph Caltabiano, who is the newly minted and appointed CEO and chairman of the Healing Realty Trust, and a gentleman that's no stranger here to the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast, Cody Shandraw, who is the president and founder of the Healing Realty Trust. Gentlemen, I don't know about you, but it's a great day here in Vegas. How's it where both of you are at?
Thanks, David. I'm in Chicago right now, so not quite as good as Vegas, but not a bad fall day. Still in the 50s, and I'll deal with it, but looking forward to getting down to Florida pretty soon and enjoying the warm weather.
Yeah, you better flock down there soon.
It's South Florida, dude. It's 80 degrees. It's always beautiful here.
Definitely. All right. Well, happy to have you both on the show here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Healing Realty Trust. Joe, I'm going to start with you. We were talking before we jumped on here, how you were recently retired, and, you obviously come with an impressive background co-founding Cresco Labs, which was one of North America's largest vertically integrated cannabis operators. You've done a lot throughout your career in real estate and finance. And obviously, to make the decision to come out of retirement, you want to do it for the right reasons. So I want to hear from you, what motivated you to come and join the Healing Realty Trust team here at this very unique intersection where psychedelics and real estate converge?
Yeah, so David, I've had a fantastic career, and I feel very blessed to have been part of some really interesting industries, especially at the times I was, the mortgage banking space from the early 2000s to mid 2000s, then leading into cannabis, as you mentioned, at Cresco, which is an amazing opportunity to kind of lead that industry into now what is, multi-billion-dollar industry. And I was pretty content, doing some passive investing, and Cody had approached me to invest in this opportunity and look at being a board member. And then as I talked more and more, the excitement after going to the MAPS conference out in Denver, it really opened my eyes to this industry and the excitement that is there. And then as you see, the behavioral medicine kind of world evolving, I think there's no secret that a lot of that is probably one of the biggest weak points of American medicine is behavioral and mental science health. And seeing this evolution of some of these drug developments that are occurring, but they can't do it without the infrastructure in place. So, my background of real estate and finance and kind of leading edge medicine really got me excited for this opportunity. And I think it's going to be a game changer, not only in how we deal with mental health, but then building the framework for where those drugs are administered and how that goes forward. And I think you're going to see a significant change in the treatment of some of these terrible diseases.
So Cody, we had you on the show here at the very beginning of the year when you first launched, which was then the Healing REIT. It's now the Healing Realty Trust. I'll let you kind of explain the name change here, but I imagine a lot's happened here in the last several months since you first launched this. A lot of exciting things. You want to talk to us a little bit about the process, of course, and maybe starting with the name change and everything that's progressed here over the last several months?
Yeah, of course. So the name change, banker-led like usual. But listen, man, we're still going to be electing REIT status. So that has not changed. It's just obviously, if you look at the last, 5, 6, 7 years of these REITs going public, it seems like that Realty Trust is kind of the new shiny name that everybody likes to use. So figured we'd jump on board and kind of follow the crowd there, not stand out too far. Already, being involved in psychedelics is enough of an outlier for what is normally, I guess, a very conservative industry. So didn't want to ruffle too many feathers there. And man, the last year has been unbelievable to kind of watch this thing grow. Obviously, like we talked on earlier, the mission is still the same, right? It's expanding access for all of these therapies. You look at obviously the data coming out with MAPS and how positive it was, even better than the last phase 3 trial, which almost unheard of. That the second phase 3B is stronger than the first one. Normally from a regulatory standpoint, they kind of go through the fine-tooth comb and see if there were anything that were maybe fudged through, and that just didn't happen here. But looking at, the market, I mean, listen, nothing has changed, right? 22 million people a year, PTSD diagnosis in the United States. That number, I think, is going to continue to increase just coming out of a 20-year war in the Middle East. Looks like, unfortunately, we might be going back into the Middle East. So I don't think those numbers are going to go down. And looking at the overall broader health picture, mental and behavioral health are probably right now the worst they've ever been in this country, maybe globally. So I don't think that there is enough emphasis placed on how fast that the infrastructure follows up to the science now, right? We've seen $3 billion be poured into this industry over the last 36 months, and 257 million of it has gone into clinical infrastructure, less than 10%. So there is a giant need, and that's why this company was started. Now having somebody like Joe that has had just the most unbelievable success at scaling companies, it's now going to put us in a position where we're able to bring up the real estate side and the infrastructure side back to the science side, where we can get these medicines into people's hands. So I'm excited, man. I honestly, I can't wait for the next couple months. It's there's some news that we're sitting on that we're very eager to announce shortly. I think you maybe know a little bit more than most of the public, and Joe wants to tip the cap a little bit on some of the other stuff. I'll let him do so, but man, I'm excited.
Yeah, as well you should be. I mean, it's been a long time coming, and I know you, Cody. You've been involved in this space for like five years now. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, you've seen a lot. There's no question about it. I want to talk a little bit more too and drill down into exactly how real estate and psychedelics, how they make sense together here. Because I think for most individuals, they look at it and they're like, I don't get it. How does real estate, mix with psychedelics? But let's start with talking about the importance of that infrastructure that you mentioned. Because when you talk about psychedelic therapy and psychedelic healing, very different from anything that the healthcare systems, whether here in the United States or even up in Canada, has ever seen before. These healthcare systems have been very much set up to get people in and out as quickly as possible, almost like a fast food chain. Whereas with psychedelic therapy, we're talking about therapies and sessions that could last 5, 6, 7 hours. So obviously there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built there. How is the Healing Realty Trust here playing a role in building that specific infrastructure here that's going to support the therapy that's right around the corner and that's starting to come here with psychedelics? Joe, if you want to maybe start, give us your thoughts on that.
Sure. So it's no secret, everything is moving out of a hospital from a treatment standpoint, right? That's not where treatments are done. It's more outpatient. You're seeing that with dialysis. You see it with urgent care. Everything is getting moved out of hospitals. This is no different. What's really unique about this is not some medicine that you're going to go to Walgreens or CVS and pick up and self-administer. Right. That's the big differentiator for these therapies. As you alluded to, some of these sessions are 2 hours, 3 hours, and as long as 6, 7 hours, as we get into some of these nouveau therapies like MDMA treatment. You're not going to want to sit in a dentist chair and have a 6-hour experience with you and your psychiatrist. That is not what is going to create an environment that is heading towards wellness and heading towards healing. So, the opportunity for us to go in, identify operators, and making sure they have the right real estate in place to administer these therapies where their patients feel safe, where they feel comfortable, and they can get the treatment they need, right? It's not just a tiny room with one chair in it. You need a couch, you need your own bathroom, you need, the lighting, you need the entire experience to help open up these wounds and really start getting treated from the root, right? These therapies are designed to cure people. They're not designed to be yet another Band-Aid like a lot of the medicines that are out there. They're hopeful that this, with talk therapy, with psychedelic therapy, you're going to see, root causes get discovered and treated. So again, the environment, as we go out and buy pieces of property that range from, call it 3,000 to 10,000 square feet, that have multiple treatment rooms in it, that are a clean, safe, comfortable environment for people and administrators. That's what we're all about. And then leasing them back to the practitioners. Doctors should focus on being doctors. Doctors should focus on providing medicine, providing treatment. We want to be the gateway for them to be able to have a turnkey real estate solution where they don't have to worry about all of the ins and outs that a dentist has to do when he builds out his own office. We want to provide that in the way that we feel will be most suited for the customer's growing needs or the patient's growing needs.
So you mentioned, Joe, finding operators that have the right real estate in place. Can you give us an example of what a clinic or what, a practice might look like that might fit something that you guys are going to target and say, this is a great opportunity for us to get involved in?
Yeah, I mean, it's national. So in any market, I think a lot of the indications that we're going to see treated by these therapies are PTSD indications. So, near VA centers, near large populous centers, but it can be an inline piece of real estate, right? It can be a strip mall-esque, or it can be a freestanding building. It can be a variety of different things. You're going to see some in residential neighborhoods, the big houses that you can ultimately convert to a therapy facility. And it's also going to be in existing other clinics, meaning we're getting approached by eating disorder clinics where they're seeing that 20% of their patients are there because of a PTSD diagnosis. Now they can introduce another therapy that's insurance paid that can help get their people well, right? The eating disorder isn't the root cause, it's the PTSD that caused the eating disorder. So you're going to see these therapies in existing behavioral, mental, and physical health facilities as well. So it really will run the gamut of different types of properties. But again, you need large spaces for these treatment rooms. I think that's the biggest differentiator is if you walk into a doctor's office or a therapist's office today, typically it's pretty small, it's pretty dark. There's a bathroom down the hall. You walk by the waiting room every time you're going somewhere. This is about keeping that environment in one place where someone can relax, let down their guard, and start getting the treatment that they need.
Yeah, and Cody, I want to ask you because I know you've been following this sector for several years now. Ketamine clinics have been around now for a couple of years, and I think have provided us with a good, insight into what some of this psychedelic therapy and psychedelic-assisted clinics are going to look like. What lessons have been learned here? Because we've seen, so some big companies like Field Trip Health, they went down. Are there any lessons that you've learned here in sort of following what these ketamine clinics have done that are basically going to be something that you're going to carry over here with you?
So listen, the mistakes that these ketamine companies have experienced over the last couple of years is actually what really influenced me to start this company. Not shockingly, I know we talked about this in our last interview. I think that most people are going to be very surprised. Joe touched on it a little bit with the eating disorder clinic. These are not going to be these ketamine clinics that are the foundational pieces of MDMA, psilocybin, of these new therapies being rolled out. It's going to be the existing clinical infrastructure that is already well established in this country. You're going to see eating disorder centers, a company like Montanito. You're going to see behavioral health indications, specifically maybe drug and alcohol disorder. A lot of people don't realize a very high percentage of those people that struggle with addiction also have an underlying traumatic event that in most cases kickstarted those addictions. So I actually think it's not going to be the ketamine clinics that are driving this. It's going to be those legacy healthcare providers that are focused on other indications, but have pre-existing PTSD diagnoses for a large segment of their patient population. So that's going to be where the majority of this rollout takes place. I think one of the problems that happened with ketamine clinics is, these guys were really focused on one treatment. Maybe in some cases, they had TMS or other things that they were doing there. But, this is going to be rolled out from companies that this is just a tool in their toolbox, right? This isn't something where it's going to be just a solely focused MDMA clinic. They're going to offer med management. They're going to offer talk therapy. They're going to offer inpatient services where somebody's staying there for 30, 60, 90, 120 days. That is what the real rollout of this is going to look like. I want to be very clear. It's not, I think we're actually seeing the ketamine clinic model start to shift in real time. If you look, Spravato is now on its way to a blockbuster drug. What happened in between that? You started to see regular practices start offering this therapy to their patients. Before in 2019, when this all started and Spravato was approved, there were less than 50 clinics in the United States offering this. Today, there's 3,000 of them. So we see that direct correlation, right? How the infrastructure, one of the things you just talked about is what's the correlation between psychedelics and real estate? It's one of the weirdest things you can ask, but it's the only way that these therapies are going to be rolled out to the general public. The infrastructure has to be in place for these to roll out. And also, one of the interesting things that I noticed the last couple of years, traditional investors, as soon as you start talking about psychedelics, they're like, yeah, see you later. No thanks. Once this starts to become a little bit more regulated and there's framework and we know what this is going to look like, then maybe I'll start investing some of my money. This provides that access for those traditional real estate investors to do something that they already know, which is real estate, specifically medical office buildings, maybe the most recession-resistant asset class in the world. Now you're going to have that asymmetric upside of that psychedelic therapy, but have that long-term stable income that medical office real estate provides to an investor. So I think it's multiple fronts really.
Yeah, and Joe, you obviously have a terrific track record with running successful businesses and driving revenue. I want to talk a little bit about the monetization strategy here, the business model for the Healing Realty Trust, because I know that's probably a question that potential investors out there are looking at. They're going to look at it and say, okay, how are you guys going to monetize? So can you walk us through just, very on an elementary level even, how you plan to monetize things here with the Healing Realty Trust?
Yeah. So, listen, real estate has gotten beat up lately, right? You're seeing interest rates rise. You're seeing a lack of capital in the space. So it is first and foremost to create a return for investors in real estate. It starts with buying right. That is how you make money in real estate, is buying properties at the right levels. Fortunately for us, we're buying into a depressed real estate market. You're seeing values come down as we're making offers on property. It's 20, 30, 40% of list price. So if we're buying real estate well below replacement costs, you've already got inherent value in that property, right? Meaning you can't rebuild that for the same price that you're buying it. So it's a great time and a great starting point to acquire real estate. Then you start layering what we're able to charge from a rent standpoint to some of these operators. And as you look at the wide net that Cody mentioned, right, behavioral health, which is a $130 billion industry, that's a very wide net. In that, gets very competitive. Everyone wants to do leases for the largest facilities out there, the people who've been in business for a very long period of time. That gets very competitive. And what that means, as a REIT, you have to offer more aggressive terms to some of those operators. As you get into more niche, and we will be doing that, right? We will be working with the Montanitos, and we will be working with these AAA credit tenants in the space. But where we're also unique is we understand the psychedelic side, and we understand the psychedelic therapies, and we understand the psychedelic clinics. Having partners who've ran and invested in all aspects of those industries, we can talk to those operators a little bit different. We can help them with their billing. We can help them with some of the other things that larger REITs can't do. And quite frankly, they may not be interested in even owning their real estate or having them as tenants. So as you kind of move down that scale from this $130 billion industry down to, call it, the $10 billion industry of psychedelic therapy, or when that gets to a $10 billion industry, you're able to get higher return on your capital. You're able to charge a little bit more in rent, which again juices the yields for our investors. So we can get an outsized return on real estate that we're buying at an undervalued basis. Now you're creating real value for investors. You're able to create outsized returns. You're able to monetize these in a much greater way. In addition, with interest rates as high as they are currently, we're underwriting a very modest level of debt on these properties with quite frankly higher interest rates than we've seen in the last 20 years. As we press forward and as we get into the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we expect those costs to go down. When interest rate costs go down, property values tend to go up. So not only are we buying at a very low point now, we're able to bring in tenants that have had a history of paying, that have a history, that they're good credit tenants, but quite frankly, not quite as high as cannabis tenants pay, right? Because that was federally illegal. It's important to point out this is all federally legal type of operations that we'll be financing, but they're not going to get the same rates as the big hospital, right? They're going to pay a little bit of a premium. So you buy property right, you have a little bit of a premium because of the operation. And then as interest rates go down, you can layer on some additional leverage. continuing to create an outsized return for your investors. So that's the monetization process. And then, as we scale up, we expect to build $1 billion portfolio over the next 5 years. So as you build up a larger portfolio, ultimately the value of that portfolio, because of its size and scale, also creates more value for your investors.
Yeah, and Cody, if there's one thing that I've learned about you is that, you're not only really good at having your finger on the pulse of where things are here today, but you're also several steps ahead in your thinking and in your planning from a business side of things. And, I feel like, and I hope this isn't showing your hand here, but I feel like you're onto something when you talk about eating disorders. And, when we look at even just, the weight loss, market size here in the United States, I actually did some research prior to this. Custom Market Insights published a report earlier this year that stated that the U.S. weight loss market size and share was valued at approximately $135 billion. Now, when we talk about psychedelics, we talk about psychedelic therapy. A lot of the conversation traditionally has been focused on treatments for depression, PTSD, anxiety, alcoholism, and all very, very important things. But you're looking at something that a lot of people haven't even really talked about yet, and that's, eating disorders and weight loss management. So I guess my question to you here is, when you talk about how large a market share is for, what you guys are going to look to tap into, are there weight loss clinics or eating disorder clinics that you're going to look at and say, all right, we could actually, tap into these and we can actually work with them?
So I appreciate the compliment, first off. But listen, all credit goes to the team. Without people like Joe and Daniel Carcillo and Aaron Robb and Ty Zakovich, listen, these are the guys that are making my life easy for me to be able to sit down and kind of look at that wider picture. I think it's really interesting that, listen, the PTSD thing, obviously near and dear. I sit on the board of a psychedelic veterans foundation. I want to see this rolled out successfully because I think it's good for the industry. But when you start looking again at the drugs that are coming down the pipeline and the specific indications of those drugs that are coming down the pipeline, I think that this opportunity maybe gets lost sometimes. I'm really excited for the overall adaptation of what these therapies are going to provide. Okay. I want to make sure HRT remains at the forefront of healthcare real estate investment. I think that all of these clinics and all of these opportunities are eventually going to adopt these new therapies, whether it's off-label use, whether it's for a new drug that was approved specifically for that use. I don't want to have just that narrow focus that, listen, we're just focusing on PTSD centers. Because again, one of the providers that we're working with right now that we're in process of buying a building for, 19% of every single patient that comes through for an eating disorder for them has a PTSD diagnosis. So again, I think that you're going to see a very large shift in exactly how these treatments are being done and where they're being done. I don't think that it's going to be done. If you would have asked me this 12 months ago when we first sat down to talk about this, I would have said, listen, these are all going to be standalone MDMA centers. It's going to look a lot like the ketamine rollout. And now that we've seen this evolution grow and we've had all of these other tenants reach out to us, it's one of the amazing things. We've done no outbound marketing. We haven't gone and looked for a single tenant. These are all people that have been reaching out directly to us, which is amazing because it shows that these doctors, these practitioners, these operators, they're looking a year down the road, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road at these new therapies that are coming. And they want to be the tip of the spear for a lot of these. We want to be there to be able to provide that real estate for them. I'm very excited because over 50% of the people that we talk to, they're like, listen, I just want to have it built. I just want to have it ready. I'll use it for treatment for another purpose right now. But day number one, when that goes live, we're going to be ready. We'll be one of the first centers in the country to offer this to our patients. So seeing kind of the foresight that some of these operators have, that's really one of the things that gets me the most excited, man. So, a lot of it, like I said, goes towards the team, and them being able to kind of look long-term picture and those powwows. Obviously every successful company is led by a successful team. So I want to give a lot of credit to those guys. But yeah, man, I think that this is going to look a lot different, the commercialization of psychedelics specifically, than everybody anticipated a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, so much has just changed in the last couple of years alone. So I think we're looking at a much larger market sector here than what I thought, we anticipated just a couple of years ago. So it's exciting. There's no question about it. I want to talk to you about some of the challenges that are involved, helping folks out there understand, in terms of converting an existing clinic. Do these clinics have to shut down? Do they have to just shut down a portion of their clinic? I mean, what does that process look like? How quickly can that be turned around so that you can get a clinic that maybe is currently offering, services that are not psychedelic related, but, get them up to speed into a place where they can offer psychedelic therapy? Can you just give us some insight on what that process actually looks like?
Yeah, so on the real estate acquisition side, there's no one size fits all, right? They can do whatever they want. We will provide TI dollars or tenant improvement dollars. So in addition to buying the building, we're also more than comfortable with doing some expansion, reconfiguring things, and giving our insights. But a lot of the operators are going to have their own opinion on what their facility looks like, and they certainly can do that. We don't want to have buildings that are overbuilt, right? We're not looking for gold toilets and bronze statues in the front, but we're looking for make sense real estate plays and make sense improvements that help bring the building up to a more modern day look, a modern day feel, a comfortable feel. But there's no right or wrong size, right? If a treatment room is 50 square feet now, right, we'll suggest it's a little bit larger than that. So to be able to do these new therapies and keep people in a room for a longer duration than maybe they're accustomed to. But, every building is going to have different turn times, right? You can, if they have five rooms currently and they want to close a couple of them to expand them, and then, finish that and expand the other ones, we can work with them. We're a very flexible landlord. We're very tenant friendly. I think that's going to differentiate us from others. So, it's us working with the team that is running those operating businesses, understanding their needs, providing some feedback from our real life experience, right? We're at conferences. We've been in clinics. We've owned and operated clinics. So we'll give some insights. Whether they follow them or not is kind of up to them. Then we'll assign a TI package that they can allocate those dollars to whatever needs to be improved within their facility. Or quite frankly, if it's not the right facility and they want to look at another facility, we have access to the healing maps, right? Which is going to show us where to locate these facilities. So we'll also do a real estate analysis of their existing business, and they have too much competition in the near area and they want to, do a significant amount of build out. We also can look at finding them and sourcing them a different building, or maybe it's their second or third or fourth location. So again, we have tools to help them really understand their business. We want operators that are thinkers. This is designed to be a symbiotic relationship between the tenant and the landlord, where we can not only help them with this one clinic, but ultimately find people who can scale and grow, and us provide them the fuel to do that, right? And go out and open multiple centers and really build a business that is substantial and helping a lot of people in their areas.
Yeah, so we're looking at opening all of these centers and these clinics. I also want to talk about the importance of affordability, because I know that for a lot of ketamine clinics here over the last year or so that I've spoken to, they've hit a wall in the sense that they've tapped out in terms of not finding enough customers that can actually afford to pay out of pocket for their services, which is why the importance of insurance coverage is going to be critical, I think, here in the months and years ahead. So talk to us a little bit, how do you see that playing a role in terms of insurances being able to provide coverage, whether full reimbursements, partial reimbursements for psychedelic related therapy?
Yeah, it's of paramount importance. Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, so there's a couple things, and this gets back to the conversation we had about off-label use of a medication, right? So Spravato is 100% covered. So if you look at the clinics that are doing very well with ketamine, we just got done meeting less than 60 days ago with the largest provider of Spravato in the entire state of Florida. And their business is doing amazing. They're looking at opening 5 additional centers with us over the next 24 months. They're very excited and they're growing, but they focused on, and again, that gets back to having those recession-resistant tenants, right? These are people providing essential services, so they're seeking that same medical care for that depression, regardless of the economic conditions, because they're already paying for insurance. So when I look at, there's two things that are the most important for me, at least, and obviously the team probably has maybe some varying opinions there, but I want to make sure that the access is the most important thing, because what makes things affordable is access to a lot of it, right? So if these centers are rapidly evolving and growing across the country and the footprint is getting larger and larger, the cost is going to come down naturally, right? Because there's going to be a market that, is capitalism. It's a beautiful thing, right? Is the pricing always figures itself out. So I think providing more access is number one and most important. But let's talk about PTSD specifically. I don't know if a lot of your listeners are familiar with the community care network. So the VA offers insurance reimbursement for providers who qualify. So for example, let's talk about this, clinic chain in Western Florida. So they do a majority of community care networks. So what they do is, as soon as they open up a new center, they fill out a form. It gets sent over to their local VA center. As soon as they get approval to treat those indications, now VA insurance provides for that. So, TRICARE is a beautiful thing. It provides a range of healthcare services, doctor visits, hospital stays, preventative care, prescription drugs, mental health services. So I really think that you're going to see a lot of that type of treatment and that type of insurance. That's why, listen, while the off-label use, things like weight loss or things like that we're talking about, I think that the drug being approved for that specific indication and then allowing that to be billed through insurance is going to be key to making this affordable. And back to Joe's point, healing maps, right? Having this powerful tool that we can sit down with an operator and say, okay, let's take a look at Palm Beach, Florida, for example. There's 17 clinics in here. We're identifying X amount of searches. Let's say it's 10,000 searches per month that are being done for this geographical location. We have this amount of clinics. Probably not sustainable to build another clinic in this area. If we look just north in Jupiter, Florida, there's only 2 clinics, but we're seeing the exact same amount of searches. So that's why using that data to influence not only where these clinics are placed, but the size of these clinics. We've seen that with Field Trip, right? They were going into very highly competitive markets and opening these giant facilities, when if they would just open up a facility that was a half that size, they could have kept that thing busy and full throughout the day, 7 days a week. So that's why using that data to influence not only the decisions of where we're purchasing, but the size of those facilities is really instrumental in not only making sure that our tenants continue to pay us rent, but also that the practitioners themselves are successful. So using that data to influence those decisions is, it's really a cornerstone of what we're doing.
So leveraging on that data that you guys are going to utilize here, is there a target number of clinics that you'd like to see the Healing Realty Trust be involved in over, let's say, the next 2 years?
Yeah, I think, it's realistic for us, given the size of the team. We'll look to do a deal a month for the next 12 months and then double that next year, right? We'll probably do somewhere between 12 and 18 deals this year. And then another, call it 24 to 40 deals the following year. Certainly things can change, right? As we're seeing this huge inbound opportunity right now, we'll also start to look to do some external marketing and find deals that we want to do. Once we get a little bit more deals under our belt, we build out the team a little bit. You want to be conscious of scaling the business appropriately, right? With the right leadership in the right seats. And you try to have some role players, but you also have people who can kind of jump from spot to spot. But at the end of the day, my job is to make sure we grow. I'm a growth person, right? I'm not in this to do 1 or 2 deals. I want to scale this thing, but I also learn very quickly to scale it appropriately, to make sure we're underwriting deals correctly. I don't need to do every deal today. I don't need to work with every tenant today. Our team is specifically charged with finding the right deals for us, finding the right deals that are going to turn long-term investments for us. So it's really important for us that we grow strategically. And then when the motions, when the right people in the right seats and we have the infrastructure in place, we can really turn this thing on and scale it up very quickly. But I think over the next 2 years, we'll probably do somewhere between 35 to 50 deals, if I had to guess, over the next 24 months. But then you're going to start seeing us really ramp up and be able to do 3, 4, 5, 10 deals a month, hopefully, when we hit our full stride.
Yeah, and I want to underscore the importance of that approach to strategically grow, because I know that in speaking with investors, there's always that concern that they're going to try to just move too quickly. And again, I mean, I hate to keep throwing Field Trip under the bus here, but, that was one of the big mistakes that they made. They just, like you said earlier, Cody, they thought, okay, let's just throw up a clinic in Los Angeles.
They will come.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not always the case. And it's not always the case, too, because, I wonder, and I want to hear from you, Cody, I mean, how important is education going to play a role here? Because I think part of what held Field Trip back was people just don't know about this, and people are just not educated to the point. So how important is educating the masses out there on the benefits and the safety and responsibility protocols that are involved with psychedelics and psychedelic therapy?
Listen, education is everything. You only know what you know. Right. So if I'm going to my doctor and I don't even know that these therapies exist, why would I even ask them or bring it up? That's another reason why I've been so excited that the doctors are the ones that are reaching out to us to ask about these things. So if these guys are getting educated, they're going to be educating their patients. So I think that, I have renewed sense of vigor because I've been able to talk to so many of these doctors in fields that I would never even guess that I'd be having conversations around MDMA or psilocybin for. That's the most exciting thing. Listen, the media has done an amazing job. Probably one of the few instances where media coverage has been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, it's been a really, and bipartisan too. That's one of the more amazing things that I think I've seen. Right and left-wing journalist sources have been covering the space almost at the same equal rate, and the coverage has been amazing because everybody knows somebody that has been affected with some type of mental health condition the last decade. So I think that support is there. And listen, we have athletes, we have entertainers, we have Elon Musk, heads of companies. Everybody is talking about this right now. I don't think that there's any shortage of knowledge out there. I think making sure that these companies are framing their messaging properly. One of the things that kind of make me a little bit nervous, and that gets back, we've seen the same thing. I mean, Joe and I talked about it at the NAPS conference, right? That suits versus the roots argument of any industry as it grows. This doesn't really have that kind of same stigma. Obviously, there's a camp. MAPS has done a great job. They were a nonprofit for 30 years. And then watching that kind of culture and the root side of that go towards the suits and becoming a public benefit corp, and seeing how that institutional money and, the suits are really going to make sure that these therapies are expanded and access and affordability for everybody to experience them. That's one of the really interesting kind of pieces that I think that this has a very large advantage of, because the educational aspect is so strong. One of the first things Joe told me while we were at the MAPS conference, he was like, wow, this is a much more educated crowd as to what these therapies offer and kind of what the potential are. It's kind of a shocking thing to see. We didn't have that in cannabis.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and I think just to add on that a little bit, having come from the cannabis space, right, and I likened it to when Illinois launched the medical program, or Pennsylvania, it was incumbent upon us as the operators to educate the general public. We weren't designed for that, but we did it, right? We spent $1 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you're trying to educate a medical platform, like that is nothing. The interesting thing about this is the level of professionalism when Johns Hopkins is there, when pharmacological schools are there, when drug development companies are there, ones that have real life budgets to go out and educate the public. There is going to be so much more support for federally legal products to educate the general public. There's going to be television ads. There's going to be a multimedia platform approach. You're going to see so much more education. Yes, the operators it's incumbent upon them to go out and get their customers and educate their customers, but there will be much broader support. You won't have media outlets that don't cover this like you did in cannabis for a long time. So I think you're going to see a much broader support. I think you're going to see many more dollars come from many more respected industries. You're going to see not only the states, but the federal government, including the VA, go out and educate people on this. They have such a broader reach and such deeper pockets to be able to truly put it forth an education platform. Again, not that operators aren't having to do this to get customers and win customers, but I think the entire industry will be educating people along the way too.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is changing lives and in some instances saving lives. And it's hard to argue against that. And I think that's why there's been so much support from it, whether it's the media side of things or even those, within the medical and scientific communities. And I think that's why we're going to continue to see momentum build around this. Gentlemen, this has been a fantastic conversation. Cody, I want to maybe leave it here with you with some final thoughts. You and I spoke about a year ago. I asked you what did you see potentially happening here in 2023? And you left me with one word that really stuck with me, and it was consolidation. And that's in fact what we've seen here in this space. So as we look ahead now to 2024, as our resident fortune teller, if you will, here, what do you see coming around the bend here in 2024?
You're going to see more consolidation. I want to be very clear. The companies that are well capitalized are going to end up owning 80 to 90% of this growing industry. I want to be very clear about that. I've talked to dozens and dozens of CEOs that are worried about their company's future, that have great science, that have great products, but are undercapitalized. And maybe some of the companies that were very successful in telling good stories and were able to raise a very good amount of money, but maybe don't have the best pipelines and science. So I think we're going to see continued consolidation. But most importantly, I think the story of next year is going to be how important that clinical infrastructure component was in order for Spravato to become the blockbuster drug that it is today, and how that's going to influence MAPS and their deployment. I think that the story of 2024 is going to be, what does the commercialization strategy look like, and how does the infrastructure play into where these therapies are going to be deployed through? Because one of the things that is kind of a dirty little secret that a lot of the investors talk about, you look at MAPS, right? Limited patent window. It's not the traditional long duration just because there's prior art on MDMA. You want to know who's really going to benefit from all of this clinical infrastructure that's been built out and is going to continue to be built out over the next several years? Are the companies like Compass, Usona, Awaken, all of these other companies that are coming from Cybin, that are coming farther down the pipe. They're going to be using all of that existing infrastructure. So it's kind of that explorer versus a settler arguments, right? Do you want to be the guy that's going out there and fighting the grizzly bears and wolves, establishing that community? You want to be the guy that after this place is already settled, it's safe, let's just come up, put a flag and build a house? I think that that's going to be the real story is, who ends up getting involved, number one? Is it the eating disorder clinics? Is it the addiction centers? Look at Awaken. If you look at where ketamine is, they're going to phase 3, for alcohol use disorder. I think that you're going to see a lot of these clinics that are already multi-$100 billion industries get involved very quickly. So the story of 2024 is going to be, what does the rollout for these therapies look like through the existing healthcare infrastructure, not through the new development, like we watched a lot of these ketamine clinics pop up and then shortly thereafter disappear.
Yep. And you guys, the Healing Realty Trust, are positioned right in the thick of it all. So very excited to see that. And of course, if there's anyone out there watching or listening to this, we're going to get the website linked in here. And if anybody ever wants to connect directly to Cody or Joe here, please reach out to us here at Psychedelic Spotlight. We can help make that happen. But gentlemen, I want to thank you both for your time. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I look forward to catching up with both of you very soon, as I know you have some exciting things coming down the pipe here soon.
Thanks, David.
Appreciate it, buddy. And just one last shout out, No Fallen Hero Fighter Foundation, Matthew Wiz Buckley. Every single dollar, it's a foundation that I mentioned, is going towards saving veterans' lives with psychedelic-assisted therapy. Obviously, while this infrastructure is being built, there are boots on the ground that are currently offering these therapies to patients. Obviously, listen, it's never going to be enough until the insurance side comes in, but there are, active foundations out there putting in the good work.
Absolutely. And we'll try to get that linked in here as well. So again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to catching up again soon.